For my theory exploration paper, I had to cover the Symbolic Interactionism Theory. And for those of you who don't remember what that is, since we covered it earlier in the semester, it is the ongoing use of language and gestures in anticipation of how the other will react. In other words, it's basically a conversation. It explains why we act the way we do in certain situations. The article that I chose to write about is Symbolic Interactionism and Nurse-Mother Communication in the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit by Lisa Marie Cleveland. I chose this article because I feel like the real-life example of the nurse-mother relationship helped me to better understand how this theory works. In the article, Cleveland describes symbolic interactionism theory and discusses the relationship it has with a mother who is communicating with her child's nurse. The example given in this article gets broken down into three parts: the self and mind, role-taking, and definition of the situation. Self and mind refers to viewing oneself from the position of others. Individuals come to define self on the way that others see them. The mothers and nurses that are discussed in this article fit into this concept of self and mind because the mothers want to be viewed positively. In other words, they do not want to come off as annoying to the nurses by overwhelming them with a lot of questions, and they don't want to be seen as difficult. Next is role-taking, which involves a single person undertaking a position along with all the guidelines that this position requires. As Cleveland puts it in her article, role-taking consists of an individual assuming a role and all the rules that this role entails. Relating to this scenario, a mother's typical role is to care for her child. This is put on pause when her child must seek treatment from the NICU. When this happens, the mother is temporarily not in control of her child, which causes stress. Because of this, nurses must find the best way to communicate with mothers who are worried about not having control over their child. This can cause tension between nurses and mothers due to the worry of lack of trust. The mother is unable to perform her expected role of being the main caretaker of her child because the child is in the nurse's hands. This goes against the shared meaning of the roles that mothers play, making it a difficult situation for the nurse and the mother to navigate through. Last is the situation. When talking about situation in this article, it closely relates to what I just discussed, role-taking. People problem solve and think based on their surroundings. Society has certain expectations about how people should act in a given situation. This example takes place in a hospital setting, meaning that there is a lot of stress and tension going on due to the health issues of the infant. Expanding upon my last point of role-taking, the mother and the nurse have certain roles in this type of situation and create certain perceptions about how they should each behave. The nurse's role is to take charge. Therefore, the nurse is in control of the situation. He or she must deal with the pressures involved under these circumstances, remain calm, communicate effectively with the mother, and establish expectations and boundaries. On the other hand, the mother must trust the nurses entirely with her child, which is not an easy task. The mother should be able to trust the nurse because the nurse is certified, knows what he or she is doing, and recognizes the consequences of malpractice on a patient. However, this scenario is difficult for mothers to deal with, as their typical role of main caretaker is put on pause, like I said before. They should communicate just as effectively to the nurses as the nurses would to them. In this situation, it is understood that the aspect of staying calm is very challenging for a mother, since the emotional factor of the patient being her child interferes. She must understand her place in the situation, accepting the fact that the nurse temporarily has greater control of her child than she does. Although her presence is important, the mother should not overbear the nurses. Doing this will make it harder for them to do their jobs. Mothers must learn how to balance being both a caring parent and not being overly present to the point of causing disruptions in the infant's care. This article expands upon the symbolic interactionism theory by addressing the dynamics between a neonatal nurse and a mother, the roles that each of them play in the situation, and how certain situations impact how people should act and behave.